So what I'm talking about are facts. And as I mentioned earlier, in the research that's been bandied about this topic, efforts to actually look at real-time online age and identity verification were not accepted. No one's ever asked us for any information on what we do that opposes this. That is significant because public relations is often damaged by data. What we're talking about is hard data, what's happening today, what the marketplace is doing, whether you're liberal, moderate, or conservative. In our society, we have this combination of humane principles and the market economy. In both cases, the movement of the market under those humane principles is toward real-time, effective, robust, reliable age verification and identity verification.
I got you. But let me ask you, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Schmidt. I have trouble turning my computer on, so I don't know a lot of the different things, but there is something called spooling or spoofing. And when Mr. Schmidt was talking about using this phone card, in my small world, when we said spoof when I was growing up, it means you're playing a joke on your parents, but apparently now it's a computer term. Are you indicating that Mr. Schmidt's experience with whatever he used, and I'll ask him about that again, where he got 3 different answers on where he was and none of them were Boston and Washington, is nothing more than a story that he's telling?
Again, I can't comment on data I haven't seen or a fact base that's put before me. I've never seen any of that information. In prior events like this, there's been no hard data presented. The hard data that I see all the time is what the Aristotle operation shows. Now, the other important point here is that in doing work, for example, for the New York State Lottery, no offense, Mr. Chairman, but we actually assist them in complying with agreements they have with other states. I don't mean an offense to what you said, but to bring up that lottery question again. This is a contentious issue, and as the Reverend said, people have different views about it. But as an operational matter, which is the only thing I'm talking about, as an operational matter, it's fundamentally important that the state of New York know that the purchaser of that ticket is within the state of New York. It's also fundamentally important for banking operations, both internationally and nationally, to know where somebody is when they're attempting to execute a transaction. What was said earlier about how unreliable it is does not square with the facts of 2007, but it probably is relevant to the facts of 2001. I'm suggesting that technology in the service of social good in the private sector is here, it's available, it's effective, and we should be using it.
I appreciate that, and I just by way of commercial, I use your software and never been fined by the FEC, so I appreciate it very much. Mr.
If the gentleman would yield for a representative from Ohio, that's a significant statement.
Oh, yeah. Well, Mr. Schmidt, let me ask you the same question, because I listened to your testimony and I listened to your story about the IP locator and your experience, and so is it a fair representation that you and Mr. Callipy don't agree on this issue, and are, well, I guess, are you willing to stand up for yourself? Because basically he says that you have, well, I'm not going to put words in his mouth. You heard him, so what do you got to say?
I believe it was full of baloney.
No, that was my question. He did not say you were full of baloney. I asked him if you were full of baloney, and he would not respond in that kind, and so no.
Well, first of all, as an Ohioan that went to Michigan, I'm having a little trouble over here as a Buckeye myself.
I got it. So.
I in addition, rely on the facts and the data. And the leading provider of IP geolocation data says that their data is 99% accurate to the country, 85% accurate to the city, and 85% accurate to the state, and 80% accurate to the city. So that's the leading provider in their own. So in our research, and my company uses geolocation data as one of many factors to determine information. It cannot be solely relied on because it is unreliable, but it is perfectly valid for one of many factors. We found reliability in the 70 to 80% range in general. Again, that's from factual operational experience. Now, 2 comments. First of all, the experience that I had with the wireless card that I mentioned with respect to DC and Boston, that was with no attempt on my part to actively circumvent the system. That's a standard issue piece of technology from the carrier, not unlike the technology that's embedded in many laptops these days, with no active attempt by the user to circumvent it. IP geolocation is absolutely trivial for a user to actively circumvent. So in addition to its inherent unreliability with no active attempt to subvert the system, it is absolutely trivial to subvert through a whole host of technical measures, none of which are terribly difficult. And moreover, anybody with an engineering and technical understanding of how the Internet works would not disagree with my statements here. It simply was not designed to allow geographic location. It was designed to survive failures. It was designed to allow an infinite number of paths between any 2 points, and there are a whole host of reasons why, technically and engineering-wise, it is just not reliable technology.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I know my lights on. Mr. Harvey stuck his hand up, and I think he wants to respond to that.
I think it's an important point to make that just like an automobile does not run alone on its transmission or on its cylinders, but needs cars, brakes, tailpipe, and the works, we're talking about a system that, to be effective as age and identity verification, has many component parts. These systems, by the way, have several levels of tolerance, which are set according to the risk confronted, what they call is process matched to risk. And therefore, it is a complex mix, algorithm, if you will, of capabilities that are adjusted in the cases in which they're used. It's not appropriate to make any general statement about all these cases and give a statistical number without looking at the context and the set of data you're talking about. Again, the data tells the story. The data tells the story in the marketplace every day in the tens of millions where a lot is at risk. That is what we do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Missouri has joined us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I'm in another committee hearing. Thank you for this meeting on internet gambling. We had a very lively debate last year when we considered legislation to address unlawful internet gambling, and I'm always in a struggle with these kinds of issues. I served as the mayor of Kansas City for 8 years, and during that 8-year period we enacted riverboat gaming, which I did not support as the mayor. However, I wasn't elected to serve as the Pope of Kansas City, so I signed it into law. I normally believe that Congress should not be involved in any way, shape, or form with regard to regulating morals as a policy or as a practice. So I always struggle when these kinds of issues surface. But where there is a long-standing public policy interest in regulating activities that do harm our society, such as illegal gambling, then there's an appropriate federal legislative role. I'd like to thank all of you for coming. I apologize for not hearing your comments, but I do have your comments. And Mr. Prado, hopefully I pronounced that. Prado. You mentioned that the UK is starting to regulate online gambling. I wonder how many people are gambling on the regulated sites versus the ones in countries such as Antigua that have fewer regulations. And is there any data available that the UK's experience with regulating has actually reduced the problem of with regard to gambling behaviors?
I wish I had precise data, but the weight of evidence essentially is that gamblers are attracted towards regulated sites for a number of reasons. I think the first thing is that gamblers are attracted towards regulated sites because they know that they're going to be played fair with. I mean, if you're operating in an underground prohibition environment where there are sites who are not subject to regulation, then gamblers have less confidence in the fairness of the games that they're being offered. They have less confidence in the payment scheme that they're operating. And so there is a huge commercial incentive for sites to operate within a regulated regime.